The 1906 San Francisco earthquake. The San Francisco earthquake occurred on the morning of April 18, 1906. The earthquake occurred in San Francisco, California, but was felt from southern Oregon to the south of Los Angeles and as far inland as central Nevada. The earthquake was caused by the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate moving against each other in opposite directions. This is known as a transform fault line. This specific fault is known as the San Andreas Fault. A slip occurred in the San Andreas Fault, causing the earthquake. The earthquake ignited several fires around the city that burned for 3 days and destroyed almost 500 city blocks. Because of the San Francisco earthquake, more than 3,000 lives were lost, 225,000 were left homeless, 28,000 buildings were destroyed, and more than $400 million was lost in property damage. The earthquake ruptured the ground for 296 miles along the northern section of the San Andreas Fault. The ground surfaces on either side of the rupture slipped more than 20 feet away from each other in some places. Concrete and dust and ash from the fires filled the air, resulting in air pollution. Debris from the earthquake and fires fell into ponds, lakes, and rivers. Hazardous chemicals spilled into these water supplies, resulting in the contamination of waterways. This harmed the water supply for people and wildlife. Wildlife that lived in or used the water were either harmed or killed. The fires destroyed everything in their paths, killing trees and plants. This left wildlife without food or shelter. The environmental impacts of the earthquake were regional because these impacts only affected the areas surrounding where the earthquake occurred along the San Andreas Fault. The earthquake was caused by a disruption in the geosphere, but it affected the atmosphere and the hydrosphere. In Hayes Valley, after the earthquake, a woman lit her stove to cook breakfast. However, she was unaware that the chimney above her was badly damaged. This started a 24-hour-long fire that was named the Ham and Eggs Fire. The fire destroyed parts of City Hall and Market Street. Over 80% of the city of San Francisco was completely destroyed by the earthquake and the fires. The Golden Gate Park and surrounding beaches were filled with tents. More than 2 years later, many of these refugee camps were still in full operation. The U.S. Army was brought in to patrol the streets and to discourage looting and to guard important buildings. The San Francisco earthquake in 1906 was the first natural disaster to be photographed. It took 9 years to rebuild the city of San Francisco. Prior to the earthquake, there was no knowledge of the San Andreas Fault, and California had never experienced earthquakes of this magnitude. After the devastating earthquake in 1906, scientists discovered the entire San Andreas Fault. Building codes changed drastically. They realized they needed to identify important buildings and set performance standards so that these essential buildings could resume operations after an earthquake. They also realized the dangers of building on soft soils.